It looks like the team has opted to say, hey, you know what, we consider this maybe possibly an easier matchup and want to try and give Leaky some of that opportunity to show himself in a best-of series, but we'll have to see what the case is going to be as we're going to go ahead and load on into Champion Select. AHQ going to be on your blue side, Berjaya Dragons on the red. Akali and Zoe being banned out here immediately, and we do see the Caitlyn ban. The Lilia as well. Cabbage, what's kind of your thoughts so far of what you've seen of Lilia in the PCS?
Well, actually, Lilia is a very strong pick right now against many of the champions that, like many jungler champions such as Graves. So right now she's a bit, for me it's a bit overtuned with her synergy with her ult and the whole interaction with the team. That's why it's not surprising that she's getting, like, she's calling bans. Yeah.
Do see though that Set is able to make it through a Briz.
Yeah, I have a stat for you here. Globally, Set is 66% win rate with a 96% pick and ban rate. That is kinda gross. He is a bit of a flex pick, but largely jungle and support kind of dominate him there over the top kind of set we've seen as of recent. And I do want to touch on the mid lane bans that you mentioned. Orianna, Zoe. We saw a really solid Orianna performance from, Akali Zoe. We saw a really solid Orianna performance coming through from Minji, and therefore I think Berjaya, this third pick for them should be the Orianna, followed by 2 mid bans, and that's why I need to see AHQ lock a mid next rotation, unless, of course, Berjaya open with a blind pickable one here.
Yeah, it looks like there we're going to have that Ashe coming out for K2 has been rather consistent. And then Cabbage for Ninja, we are going to see that Syndra, that just heavy burst into possibly the Echo matchup from Uniboy. But we have seen Echo go in the jungle before too in the PCS.
Yeah, definitely have, and of course, past level 6, you can just chrono break out of that unleashed power. Once you get on top of the Syndra, very difficult for her to shake you off on this Echo.
Do see though, Jhin also going to be locked in there, Cabbage.
Yeah, so the Syndra pick here is very typical, given that Zoe has been banned and together with Galio. But then again, Echo is one of the biggest counter to Syndra, and with the third pick Jhin, because right now the tier 1 AD carries are like Caitlyn and Jhin. So whatever Berjaya picks, and given that AHQ would expect K2 would be playing Ashe, they're just happy with Jhin. Yeah.
I'll do see though, Graves is going to be locked in here for Enzo, and there's still that possibility that Set gets flexed in around the map. We don't know exactly where the Echo is going to go, but we'll see whether or not that's going to be the case. Getting into our second round of bans though, we are seeing that Ornn getting banned out away from Leaky, and we were kind of wondering, for Leaky of Riz, were we going to kind of see the Mordekaiser be available? Not going to be the case, as that's being banned instead up against Ozzy. As we mentioned, both of these top laners kind of share a very similar champ pool.
Yeah, I was a little bit disappointed to see Renekton be so high priority for HQ versus PSG, only for them to never play through it. That's probably name of the game again for this squad when it comes to even starting Leaky over Ziv, is just ignore top, play through bot, especially with an early game dominant champ like the Jhin. And that's why you now see Ornn, GP, these fantastic, phenomenal weak side top laners that can still contribute to the bigger team fights, just taken out of the picture entirely.
Well, I know, Cabbage, you mentioned in this series we were expecting to see some Renekton play. Unfortunately, here for Game 1, not going to be seeing it, as it is the final ban coming out from AHQ. But what would you kind of like to see kind of round out some of these compositions on either one of these sides?
I think the 2 bans from issue is pretty smart. It just shut down Ozzy as a player immediately, and Set right now can be flexed into the bot lane and into Leona. Set should have a pretty fine matchup. So it's just up to AHQ if they want a new top laner, which is personally Camille. And that's what I've been saying since the start, because champs like the AD carry in the current meta is very immobile, and if you just pick Camille, it's going to just shut down.
Ooh, what do you answer the Camille here with though? Do you think about the Jax perhaps for Ozzy? Is he a Jax player? I'm not so sure is the thing, and if you go carry for carry, blow for blow there, it does potentially mean that Enzo has to be a little bit more intelligent about his pathing when it comes to navigating around this top side of the map.
Well, do see there, Nahlis is going to be the final lock in there for Ysera, so he has something to go for that playmaking potential. And like we mentioned, still kind of waiting to see whether or not that Echo or Set is going to be actually in the jungle. But now for Berjaya, you mentioned we could see possibly that Jax getting locked in. Briz, Cabbage, what do you think of that?
Well, Jax a great match into Camille, and I've never seen Asi playing Jax before. But with the current lineup for AHQ, they have a pretty strong answer for Jax, so it will be tough for him to get into Jhin, given that most of the champions of AHQ would be just running into them instead of
Yeah, it's
so
as well as that, just a lot of space being able to be created by the Echo W, the Set R, the Camille Stun, Jhin self-peel plus Nautilus. Really difficult for the shorter ranged members of Berjaya to actually get on top of this AHQ priority target.
Well, I want to know then, kind of, Cabbage, if you are Berjaya right now, and they're obviously kind of the underdogs when it comes into this matchup, with this composition, what is kind of their early game goals here? What do they want to try and do?
I think for Berjaya, they need to be playing when they hit 6, so they should be playing around their ultimates and their spell timers, because their composition is made around their super easy engage with Ashe R, Leona R, and Syndra stun. So during early game, they would just try their best not to lose any gold deficits, look into fighting around level 6 around neutral objectives, which like the early 2 dragons and Rift Herald. Like if they can create a great rotation at 7 minutes, try to snowball as much as possible into mid game and then try to win, that would be their main objectives. But then again, if they just wait for games to hit late game, then it will be so easy for HQ just end the game.
All right, well, thank you very much, Cabbage, for joining us here on the desk. We'll see you during our post-game. But for now, it's going to be Game 1 between AHQ and Berjaya Dragons. Berjaya Dragons are underdogs trying to take down 2nd seed when it comes to the summer split. AHQ, though, other plans in store as they are wanting to try and fight their way back and get into that marquee matchup up against Taipei J-Team as they fight their way back to the grand finals. We kind of had an idea, Briz, from Cabbage, you know, from Berjaya. You're trying to look for those level 6 for that Ashe ultimate and that kind of Syndra power spike that we usually expect. Also coming online around level 11, get that 2nd point into your ultimate. For AHQ, though, what are you wanting to see out of them in this early game?
Definitely do need to see AHQ play through bot lane. Jhin, one of those early game dominant carries that does kind of demand a little bit of attention early. You can also rely on Leaky's Camille to just quietly scale up in the side lane, and while she does have a pretty rough time in isolation versus the Jax, it's not all doom and gloom. As long as Leaky can take at least a little bit of farm, and as long as Kongyue can confidently scale up as well, you're fine to ignore that top side and just focus exclusively on snowballing through Wako and Ysera.
Well, hey, this is kind of a good trial by fire, you could say, here for Leaky. You're kind of coming in for the first time we've seen AHQ after their first week kind of slump where they got taken down by PSG Talon. And for this rookie, he gets the opportunity to get a little bit more stage experience and possibly over the course of a couple games get some experience in a best-of situation, which rather rare to actually see from some of our rookies when it comes to the PCS. So I'm excited to see whether or not he's going to be able to at least perform, even given he is into a counter matchup.
Yeah, and actually on the topic of substitutes, I am a little bit miffed that we're still seeing Minji start over Mawan, simply because Minji, whilst undefeated in a best-of series and looking pretty damn hot last week, Mawan was surprisingly good at neutralizing some of the crazier matchups that he found himself put into.
Yeah, I find it a little bit odd here from Berjaya that they've decided, all right, Minji's kind of our secret sauce that we want to try and go for here, but you know, Mawan wasn't a pushover himself. He was really good at neutralizing his lanes, and rarely did we actually see him kind of lose out. So We'll see whether or not the adjustments here from Berjaya are going to be enough to actually find this upset over AHQ. But when you take a look at like comfort picks here, you got the set for Uniboy, you got Kongya on the Echo, one of the only players to kind of bring it out in the PCS. He's going to have himself a tough order to try and accomplish.
Yeah, definitely do look at that jungle matchup as being both very farm intensive, but also being quite heavy on the action front.
There you go. Engage was coming out there from Uniboy. Minji very early on the flash, just making sure he gets himself back to safety. So that will be the summoner down for the Syndra. Makes her rather immobile here for the next couple of minutes.
Granted, they did also get the summoner out of the set, so it does mean if Delulu can be unlocked at level 6, he can walk mid with a quick and easy solar flare and really get the ball rolling for Berjaya. I'm looking at Minji's Syndra as having that kind of level 11 Luden's power spike that you mentioned, but we mentioned time and time again. But also, that should come at a similar time to K2's Blade of the Ruined King, and then we should really see this Berjaya comp explode.
We do see, though, that Uniboy might get caught out himself. Sky of the Week's going to connect into the lob there from Minji. Uniboy able to soak up some damage. Has the Haymaker, gets that shield on back. In comes Kongya, though, with the parallel convergence. Able to get the shielding, but not able to get the stun onto Enzo. Meanwhile, top lane, though, Leaky going into the 1v1 up against Ozzy is able to get that tactical sweep to get the slow down. But unfortunately, Ozzy is tracking him down. And that's going to be first blood from the solo kill of Ozzy on the Jax.
Yeah, you said it was the Camille's trial by fire here. It was Leaky's trial by fire as a player as well, and he gets solo killed by Ozzy of all players. Really rough time for the substitute top laner of AHQ here, as he is handed a counter matchup and may find himself in trouble yet again.
Yeah, I was about to say, this looks identical. I thought our feed kind of skipped, and for some reason we were seeing the exact same play, and Leaky just kind of teleports back into lane and loses half his health, so not exactly the start you're looking here in game one, and it kind of reminds us for Ozzy, he's never really been a pushover up in top lane. Is kind of one of those highlight players for Berjaya Dragons over the course of this season.
Yeah, and let me tell you why this matchup is so rough for the Camille. Not only does Jax, insta-proc his passive, consistently just stacking up the Conqueror as well. The fact Leaky went for Grasp rather than that himself does mean the Camille wants shorter burst heavy trades, because you can't take prolonged trades versus the Jax. But also, he has so much mixed damage that the Camille passive, if it gets procced on magic, he just autos you. If it gets procced on physical, he just W's you. You really cannot stand up in the prolonged trades against this champion that is so prone to just jumping in your face time and time again.
Well, with that, we mentioned Berjaya Dragons are able to strike first here in the matchup up against AHQ. They also are able to translate some of that bot lane pressure that they were able to push in from K2 and Delulu into the first dragon of the game, and so far so good here for our underdogs.
Yeah, part of that is also just because Syndra is naturally pushing out against Set with that range advantage, wave clear advantage. It is all good stuff for the side of Berjaya, and surprisingly, they are remarkably far ahead at the 6-minute mark. One Drake, one First Blood. It's not a tremendous lead, but it's still a bigger one than we expected against our second seed.
And you do have to at least give credit over to Leaky. He has been able to at least find himself a decent CS advantage. Meanwhile, though, mid lane, Uniboy, you're going to want that face breaker back as the Scour of the Week is able to connect. And Minji kind of gets a get out of free jail card with Uniboy ending up missing that ability. Meanwhile, though, top lane Leaky again. In comes Enzo as well, looking to join in onto the party, able to also get that phase rush, and there you are. Enzo picks up his first kill, and this bot lane is bleeding.
Yeah, and I kind of mentioned that the grasp trading pattern for the Camille meant she wanted the micro trades, meant she didn't want the all-ins, but the Sheen goes a long way to making Jax's burst trades a lot more effective as well. The fact he even got the prolonged one on top of that, and the hookshot was failed because it was on too chunky a part of the wall as well. Just really, really rough for AHQ's top laner here. Leaking out resources for this side of AHQ.
And I'm kind of liking this, actually, from Berjaya, because this reminds me a lot of the elements that we saw back in spring when this team was actually able to find some success, where they were not afraid to, play aggressive in some of their lanes to try and make action happen. And Ozzy, again, give credit over to Leaky. He actually has been able to maintain a CS advantage, but Ozzy already picking up one kill and also now getting a kill over to Enzo means this top side is super dangerous for Berjaya.
Yeah, a lot of respect being given by Ozzy here, saying, look, I'll go for the Tabi into this matchup anyway, just in case we continue to have those big all-ins. And I do want to touch on the fact that Echo is the only source of AP damage on this AHQ team, so you're looking at Kongyue as having to do at least relatively well in order to establish any kind of pressure onto some of these heftier members of Berjaya.
And that's something we've seen, though, from AHQ a couple times, actually, when we do see this Echo pick in the jungle. Usually Uniboy is put onto this set, and luckily, in most cases, AHQ, Kongyue is able to find a couple kills early on and get some Dark Harvest stacks in immediately, but unfortunately, this game hasn't really gone that way outside of, again, almost catching Minji out and Uniboy missing that Facebreaker. They just haven't been able to really get themselves in sync just yet in Game 1.
And this was a large criticism that Zergoth had of AHQ last time we looked at this team face off against PSG, was that the players, they pick for draft, they pick for composition, but they don't pick for comfort. They lose out on just a little bit of the effectiveness of their champions through sheer discomfort on those alone. Sarah may have to face check this 5-man from Berjaya.
And that's a 5-man collapse instantly coming out from Berjaya. Parallel convergence, though, does come out from Uniboy. Just wants to jump in, gets, again, the haymaker down from that Facebreaker. And he's able to actually turn it back. Wako flashing on forward on the Jin, also able to find the kill with that Kern call. And just like that, AHQ able to turn back a fight and are able to find themselves multiple members of Berjaya Dragons.
Yeah, tremendous commitment from Berjaya onto the support of AHQ. Yes, they get Uniboy, but only after he suplexes into their team, gets a full stacked W, big true damage, AoE, all of it just comes down onto Berjaya's entire squad. And even though they opted into this one, it is maybe a fight they are wishing they did not take.
And unfortunately there for Berjaya Dragons, we were, again, commending how well this game was going, but just like that, AHQ are able to blow the curtain wide open, and unfortunately Minji's still a little while before he's actually able to get that one-shot down onto Wako, and they're able to trade back. The one silver lining, though, for Berjaya, they were able to at least secure the Rift Herald, so we'll see whether or not they're able to use that, say, top lane and try and get Ozzy more ahead and try and, again, shut down Leaky as soon as possible.
And that was what Cabbage said would be the difference maker here. You need that mid-game acceleration that this Herald does grant you, and that should hopefully, as you said, get Ozzy in a better position, because even though he was smashing the 1v1, Leaky got a kill there, Leaky got an assist there, and Leaky still maintains his 4-wave advantage in that isolated top lane matchup.
Which, again, I find crazy the fact he's able to do this, considering he's died twice now overall. Nazi is still wanting to get that pressure, but he's actually down a level up against Leaky. So, again, even though Leaky did take that bad 1v1 early on, he's been able to pretty much stabilize himself, and that does give a little bit of relaxation over for AHQ, where Kongyue doesn't have to rely on having to gank that top lane consistently. We do see, though, from Berjaya, we're going to see that Rift Herald Shelly into the mid lane and try and crack that open and get some of this turret plating onto Minji.
Yeah, Herald being popped mid is just a way of easily getting some prio back to rotate for the second Drake in this case. But unfortunately, Herald dies a little bit too soon. You don't have push-out pressure on the bottom side, and suddenly all of that beautiful Drake setup you had has gone to the wind, much like that Herald.
Yeah, it kind of goes out the window, and if AHQ wished to, they could actually go ahead and start off this Infernal, and that would slow down the stacking of Berjaya Dragons, as they were kind of looking to aim to try and get as many dragons in their back pocket as soon as possible, but unfortunately, it doesn't look like it's going to be the case outside of a steal, as Kongyue as well as Ysera and Uniboy are going to go ahead and start that up for AHQ.
Yeah, Berjaya not even going to contest this one, rotating Enzo up top side, needing to pressure out this Camille that little bit more, I guess. Not needing, but it's something. It's like the best of a... Sorry, it's the best of a bad situation, honestly, at this point.
It's not pretty. It's not pretty, to say the least, and I think this is kind of spelling a little bit of disaster here for Berjaya. The fact that Leaky is now finding, what, a 30 CS lead before 15 minutes and not afraid to go for these quick trades again onto Ozzy. Unfortunately, we do see Enzo. He's near toward the top side of the map, but can't really do anything up against Leaky now, the fact that he has that Hextech ultimatum.
Yeah, I actually do see AHQ just aggressively invading for the blue as well. Even if you tried to force onto Leaky here, he's under turret, he's fine, he's hanging back, he's chilling, and K2 may be wishing he wasn't chilling as he finds himself pressured off of his tier 1.
And again, we kind of wondered, you know, also too, was Wako going to come back into form this week? And already in game 1, has found himself about a 20 CS advantage, also has himself on the board already with that 1 kill and 2 assists, and looks like he's in a better place than what we saw during a first week of playoffs.
Definitely is the case, and it's refreshing to see, but also a bit worrying for Berjaya's chances, because a lot of the credit we gave to them was going to be through the fact that K2 is so consistent. K2 had a fantastic week 1, and yet through that preemptive rotation for the Herald fight that did not go the way they planned, for the setup from AHQ that choked out a bit of farm when K2 just had to float between the 2 towers instead of sitting there to pick up the waves. He's found himself down a little bit of CS relative to his counterpart.
And he's actually kind of gone a little bit more of what you would call kind of a slower build path, because he ended up going into that Berserker immediately. But that's what we expect out of the Ashes, but decided to go for that call, so he has a little bit more of that kind of late game boost, or a little bit of a later mid-game kind of spike, which does kind of fall in line at least with Minji, who is about to hit that level 11 and should be getting his first item on the next path.
Speaking of first items, by the way, I have no idea where this Jhin pulled the Stormrazor out from, but suddenly Wako, the only member of either team with a real full completed item, really going to do a lot of damage when it comes to these quick and easy trades that AHQ should be trending into around this point in time.
Well, you know, Jhin, he likes to keep a Stormrazor in his theater bag, possibly. I don't know where else he could have brought it out, but having
What
himself...
What is a theater bag?
What, you don't have, like, a theater bag with all your makeup and everything? I don't know. I'm a theater kid, all right? We had those, all right? It's weird. Nonetheless, him himself already being up 30 CS, and that's kind of the story of this game. Soul lane up in top lane. Sure, Leaky was down early, but now he has a 40 CS advantage. Bot lane, Wako looking hyper consistent, up now 30 CS. The only real advantage here for Berjaya in a lane is technically Minji, but he's going up against Uniboy, who has enough utility in his kit to be useful even if he's down slightly.
Definitely is the case now, and we're looking at Berjaya as already kind of falling off when it comes to relevancy. We said they needed 11 on Syndra, plus her single item spike, plus the Ashe having Blade ideally at this point, and yet no items to be found, no pressure to be found, and it does mean Berjaya having to cede all parts of the map for the near future, given the fact that they cannot quite yet skirmish.
So there you go. AHQ are also able to secure second Shelly on the map, so they'll be able to use that somewhere on the map that they wish to. Looks like it's going to be in that mid lane, just try and unlock Uniboy as soon as possible. If it's not really pushed, though, it's not going to be able to do a whole lot, but they may threaten the dive onto Minji, who's still yet to pick up his first item. Enzo nearby, though, should be enough to dissuade this from AHQ, but who knows what the actual plan is going to be, as Kongyu not afraid to just jump in with that parallel convergence, and first tower going down for AHQ.
Yeah, AHQ cracking open that mid lane tier 1 really will go a long way to setting up vision around this next Drake, around the Baron when that does spawn as well, and it opens up flank opportunities for Camille and Echo and Sett. AHQ now fairly hefty front line, fairly big backline to boot on top of that, and Berjaya looking a little bit desperate when it comes to finding picks, because these straight up fights are not ones you want to opt into.
And, you know, it's not really all that fun when you're a Jax in this situation who's down pretty much a component piece for that Trinity Force that has now been completed by Leaky, so that extra bit of damage that comes through on that Q is a little bit ridiculous. And also to note too, Uniboy's finished off his Deadmans, has a little bit extra speed as well as some tankiness to boot, and right now HQ are looking good at the moment, but Minji has hit his first item break point as well as second point into ultimate, and Berjaya alongside with that Bork for K2, confident to go for the second Drake for them.
It's a little bit late, but it is still incredibly relevant, and yet AHQ still fishing for this flank TP in from Leaky.
Leaky maybe getting a little bit too excited there, as our observers are also questioning why he exactly teleported in there. He's just there to be a menacing presence, all right? Riz, With that, though, that does mean Ozzy will have teleport advantage on a side lane, so maybe Berjaya could try and look for a play, as maybe AHQ are deciding, hey, this bot lane has been rather quiet, and we're looking to dive.
Yeah, Berjaya now just kind of backing off, but also gathering their numbers. They are down both solo laners. AHQ.
In comes Leaky, able to get the Hextech ultimatum immediately onto K2, and you saw that damage as K2 just gets deleted. Ozzy, though, with his own TP on this Jax, unfortunately, gets stunned up in the parallel convergence from the exhaust as well, and he can't finish off the kill. Unleashed power is there, but he ends up throwing it onto Ysera, and now comes the curtain call. Third bullet lands, fourth one finds its target as Delulu gets taken down.
Yeah, Leona W fell off!
Oh, Kongya get a little bit too excited, but in comes Uniboy alongside Wako with the flash forward, finds himself a double kill, and the extended team fight again snowballs into AHQ's favors. They're able to now take 2 towers on top of it.
Yeah, Berjaya with the big fumble there. They tried to answer, but the numbers advantage. You ran in the only position that didn't have a tower to defend you. Yes, it bought time for your solo laners to collapse, but by the time Minji and Ozzy join this fight, Berjaya, their carry is already dead. They are split, they are scattered, and they are being scattered by this Jhin. A lot of damage comes through. Wako, that 4th shot just shredding, and Kongyue gets a little bit too ambitious here, but hey, they get a double kill to boot, so why the hell wouldn't you?
And that a Stormrazor, it helps do a decent amount of damage on that 4th shot on the ultimate. That extra little bit of oomph, I don't think Delulu was necessarily expecting, especially on a Leona that's supposed to be rather tanky. And with the execute being there, Wako also able to flash forward, picks himself up another kill, now sits 3-0-4. On this Jhin. He's an absolute monster anytime he gets close enough to K2, and K2 does not have his ultimate up and available. On top of that, Kongyu's now finished off his proto belt, so has that second item in his arsenal, and we always talk about how good Echo feels every time he's able to get an item.
Yeah, rapid fire cannon for the Jhin on top of that does mean we now see Wako, again, pretty much an entire item up over anyone else in this game. Kongyue with that proto belt that you mentioned does have a lot more flexibility, a lot more options when it comes to taking flanks, to sticking to these priority targets who are of course very immobile, as Cabbage did mention back in Champ Select. And suddenly this game is looking pretty dire for the Berjaya Dragons. Tried to trade back gold into the pockets of the Jax, let him take the isolated 1v1, which hasn't been looking too hot for the past couple of minutes, and just get Ozzy in a position to carry around this next Drake.
Well, it's the classic, you know, let's wait for our Jax to try and carry into the late game. Leaky, though, pretty scary himself and is going to be a side lane threat the entire time on top of it, so we'll have to wait to see if Ozzy is going to be able to actually try and answer there. But for AHQ, first game back here in Week 2, looking not half bad. Early game kind of looked a little shaky, but they were able to recover, and we're starting to see those executed team fights that look like they're always going to go in their favor. And that's kind of what we talked about a little bit between these two squads. We have a lot of players that have similar champion pool, but the big difference here is just overall experience when it comes to competitive play, and it just seems to be a lot cleaner from AHQ in most instances.
Yeah, also seeing the Wako we were promised from the regular split, which is exceptional to see, of course, because this marksman was hyped up as the probably best performing AD carry in the entire league. Granted, K2 is fantastic, given the fact he is on what was the 8th place team coming into this playoffs, and yet Wako just looking head and shoulders above the competition here.
Yeah, this is pretty much your matchup of consistency versus consistency. Even in the games that AHQ fell behind and lost, Wako always had a CS advantage, always had an experience advantage. I don't know how the guy does it, but he rarely ever loses lane, and we only actually saw it last week when he wasn't feeling well. We do see, though, Delulu gonna go ahead, pops the solar flare, a lot being burned here onto Ysera. In goes Leaky, though, over the wall. Delulu has to flash on over. In comes that enchanted crystal arrow, and Leaky gets a little bit too confident. In comes Ozzy looking for that stun, not gonna find it. Ysera, though, able to flash to safety.
Yeah, in goes Leaky, there goes Leaky. The Camille bites off way too much more than she can chew as Berjaya look to push themselves towards Ocean Soul Point. But when you take such a telegraph path, when the objective is so clear, it opens up flanks like this.
Jumps into the back line, not able to find the assassination on K2. Now Delulu back onto the re-engage onto Uniboy. Ysera gets taken on down. There comes your showstopper. Current call going to come out from Wako. Needs to try and turn this back. Third shot misses. Fourth shot ready. Isn't able to find a low health target though. And they're able to avoid safety as all those low health bars are a Jin's dream. But Wako can't get in range.
That being said, though, they push Berjaya off of this Ocean Soul, and it does mean, Ocean Soul Point, rather, and it does mean that the Drake should go in favor of AHQ, and it does mean that they've now prolonged this game. Late game is AHQ's domain, and they are propelling themselves towards it with some good front-to-back team fighting to scare Berjaya off of this objective.
Well, and that's something we even mentioned back before this fight even started, the fact that AHQ is not afraid to try and take these odd man-handed fights that they are at a disadvantage at, technically, because they just feel like they have superior team fight in general, and it ends up netting them the ability to go ahead and try and take down this Drake, even though they even lose another member during this fight.
Yeah, this hard commit onto Uniboy looked good, and in theory it is good. Like, yeah, we caught the enemy mid laner. The enemy mid laner is a full tank set who just shrugs off all of your damage, backs out, and buys enough time for your team to get some footing back around that hotly contested fourth Drake of the game. AHQ, they have good vision line set up now. Berjaya, if they want to make a case for this Baron off of the next pick they secure, whether that's onto Ysera, Kongyue, or anybody else, they need to crack open that mid lane tier 1 first and foremost.
Well, you want to know who, though, has just hit a massive power spike, and that's Wako, finishing off his Infinity Edge. So this Jin, on top of already hitting like a truck like we've already seen, now hits like a train coming at you at full speed. As he now sits at that 75% crit chance, and the extra little bit of damage going to be coming in from the Infinity Edge is going to be a bit nasty. So we'll see how Berjaya are able to, I guess, target select, because that's kind of what we've been seeing from Delulu in general. He gets hyper aggressive and ends up using, ultimates onto Ysera. They're trying to catch out on Nautilus, and this has been a common trend of the PCS where we see teams that are in a lead expend all their ultimates onto, just frontline targets when you need to be saving that for these big carries.
Yeah, literally always seeing this Jin be one item up relative to everybody else in this game. We said this champion needed to be in a very good position in the early game, needed to get the ball rolling, get ahead, and, well, he's certainly in a pretty great position, all things considered, unlike the bot lane of Berjaya right now.
Current call, third one hits, fourth one not going to land, as that is going to be the flash. Meanwhile, though, Enzo just gets immediately bursted down here by Konga, as well as Leaky. And with that, Enzo being down 25 minutes on the clock, this looks like it's going to be a Baron attempt from AHQ.
Yeah, it should be a pretty free one at this point as well. Choking out the vision of Berjaya does mean if they come to face check, they are gonna get wrecked. Uniboy running interference. Where did he go? Oh, okay, there.
He's playing sneaky right now, but in comes again that engage coming out from Delulu. Haymaker, though, is able to find a decent amount of damage. A nice scour of the week from Minji is actually able to interrupt Konga as well as Leaky. K2 arrow completely misses, but that is enough to at least pressure AHQ off the Baron and prevent it from going over.
Yeah, actually, Minji saving that fight single-handedly there. You saw the hard commit from AHQ saying, look, let's get another pick, let's get the team fight win, and then the Baron. Because they overcommit, they play their hand too soon, they get QE comboed, knocked back by the Syndra, and suddenly the game is again just in a state where we're looking for a single pick ahead of one of these big neutral objectives.
Well, it's going to be 90 seconds onto the Ocean Drake. Both of these teams already sitting at 2 stacks, so we don't see a soul point yet, but we would be liking to at least near that on this next Dragon attempt. Baron's still available, so it kind of feels like right now we're not going to see any action for the next minute. And for Berjaya Dragons, that kind of gives them a little bit of a calm here as they get their second items online. Ozzy now with his fork being completed. And it looks like we are going to see a Morello come out from Minji. opting for that, just getting that extra little bit of penetration into the build. Meanwhile, though, Leaky himself is starting to get a bit scary. Already mentioned he had that Trinity Force rather early into this match, now has the Death Stance completed.
Yeah, Death Stance pretty good for the 1v1 scenario, and the Morale-Nomicon is actually kind of justified with that healing being pumped out of Leaky. It also will help shred out the healing on Kongyue's ultimate, so it's not too terrible, but end of the day, I think we could have itemized just that little bit more efficiently for the Syndra. Can't fault him, however, as he did single-handedly carry and arguably save the game off of that Baron disengage, and surprisingly enough, taking a step back, Berjaya 8th seed versus 2nd seed of AHQ, making it look damn competitive as we do rapidly crash through the mid-game of Game 1 of this series.
Yeah, you got to give them credit. The fact that they are coming in as the pretty heavy-handed underdog in this situation, and the fact that AHQ, the early game, didn't necessarily look all that clean outside of, again, Wako having a really good lane phase, and not a whole lot of action coming out from Kongya early other than just trying to force a flash off Minji. It's AHQ that have shown themselves to be a little bit more reliable at the very least when it comes to these team fights, and I think that's the one thing that is separating these two teams at the very least apart when you take a look between them and Berjaya. With this, though, it is going to be the 3rd Dragon secured for AHQ and now puts them at Soul Point within the next 5 minutes.
Honestly, Berjaya correctly identifying that they could not fight at that moment in time, saying, look, let's seed that, even sent Enzo topside to do Krugs to boot, and now you have Berjaya just kind of taking a couple of minutes, taking a breather, saying, look, we have one Drake that we can give away here. It's not quite Soul, it's not quite the Baron. We have a little bit of breathing room to scale up, get a couple more items, get a little bit more gold in our priority targets inventories, and then look to take a skirmish around that Baron pit in a couple of minutes' time.
Do you see, though, Wako has set up a garden here in mid lane. Got ourselves 6 Jhin plants all lined up and ready for the trap line, and for Berjaya, it means one of their options to try and, again, roam over. I'm interested. Delulu. Is he actually going to pull the trigger? He decides not to. He saw a lone Ysera, and some good judgment actually coming out there from Delulu. Actually, from Delulu, this game, arguably, his early aggression has been pretty much non-existent compared to what we have seen from him before, where he loves to go for those heavy roams, and that's kind of the one thing we kind of felt like was kind of needed here from Berjaya, as AHQ are the ones that are going to go ahead and start up the Baron, but they do see that teleport coming out from Ozzy, and unfortunately that poor Jax is going to come around the corner and realize there's the whole family coming in for the party. Ozzy gets brought on back with a showstopper, and there you go, AHQ get themselves a quick and easy pick.
Yeah, should be able to transition that one into a pretty clean and easy Baron, unless Enzo makes the magic happen. But again, we said, if Berjaya wanted any kind of footing around these neutrals, they needed that mid-tier 1. Taking that down now, looking for the contest, can they get the steal?
We'll see here, though. Uniboy flashing on in, able to get that face breaker. Solar Flare completely misses, and Minji gets taken on down. And without that Syndra, without the Ashe, there is no damage threat available for Berjaya Dragons, as AHQ were able to find, again, 2 quick picks, and then, again, resume the Baron.
And I was gonna say, I love that Leona commands the enemy team to build Merc Treads, because these AD damage threats, Jax, Ashe, Graves, all gonna deal so much damage, but with 2 of them banned out, dead at the start of the onset of that fight, it does mean that there's no chance for Berjaya to trade that one back. They can't dish out the DPS, they can't contest for the Miracle Steal. Yes, they get the mid-tier 1, but at what cost?
And it gets really scary now, because AHQ themselves have a rather scary siege available to them with this Baron when you take a look at Berjaya's comp, where the only real wave clear you got is kind of this Syndra. Everybody else has to pretty much get in face of the minions, and AHQ, with this in hand, could look to try and crack open the base and possibly force Berjaya Dragons to have to make that do-or-die call as we take a look back to the engage coming out from Uniboy.
Yeah, this was with Jax already pretty dead, so Berjaya already down one of their frontliners. Leona fishes for an engage, but as you correctly identified, Solar Flare was kind of int. With Syndra dead from the onset, again, just really easy to punish these relatively immobile carries from the side of Berjaya, and it does mean that once AHQ get in their faces, once these flashless priority targets are isolated, they just melt in the face of this onslaught.
You saw there Wako getting down to half health. Ozzy has to get himself back to safety. Solar Flare use on Ysera. Once more, Minji, Hextech Ultimatum ends up bringing him down. Ysera is able to finish off the kill. Berjaya trying to kite back here as AHQ getting rather aggressive, but Wako is completely online at this point, and there's nothing Berjaya can really do about this as AHQ look to now take the base of Berjaya and take home game 1.
And I praised Berjaya for making it look competitive, but that was until 5 minutes ago. The game explodes on the knife's edge, and AHQ are living for it in game 1 of this explosive series.
And you saw there even a quick attempt coming out from Ozzy and Enzo. It's just not going to happen in K2. The lone survivor of Berjaya Dragons unfortunately has to watch his Nexus fall as AHQ come online and show that heavy aggression after a shaky early game.
And what a redemption arc for Wako in particular. A terrible series last week, completely nullified by this all-star carry performance. The Jhin got big, the Jhin put on his carry pants, and the Jhin pulled it home in favor of AHQ.
And Cabbage, you were able to watch a little bit of that game, obviously, from the sidelines here. I'm kind of interested on your thoughts here, especially in Berjaya, because the early game looked okay. It did look all right. We saw instances of, say, Ozzy getting those solo kills onto Leaky, but we never really see it materialize into anything else.
I think the biggest takeaway from this game is that Berjaya builds comes around playing out play around neutral objective, which in turns they are required to be the first on any single point of the map that the neutral objective that they want to contest, so that could use their ultimates to create a fight when AHQ are trying to advance their visions or trying to face check blind spot. But in this case, it just shows that the rotation is a bit lackluster, because every time that there's a neutral objective spawning, AHQ would be the first one to be on that spot instead of Berjaya, which in turns neutralize how they want to play the game with this comp.
Yeah, I think that was kind of our...
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. And the skirmish at the Rift Herald, where Berjaya tried to stack up together against a team that has Echo and Set, when they should have been spreading out, just cause Leaky to snowball back into the game and just wins Jax.
Yeah, it's a rather difficult thing. Right? I think that's kind of the overall attitude that we felt at Briz, where we felt like Berjaya needed to be that proactive team, but instead they were the ones acting reactive.
Yeah, the solo kill top lane made it look pretty promising if they just decided to play with all that pressure that Jax was commanding, and instead it just felt like Berjaya were playing catch-up when it came to rotations, when it came to actually making aggressive plays on the map, and instead of snowballing through the kind of micro leads they found for themselves, instead just kind of fell flat.
And I know, Cabbage, you made a note to me about this, that this kind of bot lane dive was kind of the snowball that AHQ was mainly looking for, as at this point there was kind of no turning back for Berjaya Dragons.
Yeah, so I think this play started from the main reason why this play happened was because of their bad usage of Rift Herald at mid side, where they could have just delayed their Rift Herald usage a bit later so that they could potentially threaten Baron take with their bots wave pushing. But then I think they just messed it up, used Rift Herald too quickly. The Rift Herald died while their bot side was being pushed in. They lost Dragon, and then with how low their bot turrets are, and with just the only remaining one, they already know that AHQ would be diving bot, but instead they try to defend that threat when they are already behind, which just caused AHQ to just take away this game.
Yeah. And MVP for this match, it is going to be the mid lane for AHQ. Uniboy on the set, 3-1-9. Rather had it wasn't a eventful lane phase, but this is the thing when it comes to Uniboy, especially when he's put on something more utility-wise. He's not looking to stomp the lane phase. Instead, he's looking to carry those team fights for AHQ.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of that lane phase, not only did we see the Camille get solo killed, but the flub on that initial flash from the set to try and set up for that gank. It was a rough start for AHQ, but they bounced back. As you said, the set just soaked so much pressure, got some sick flanks off, was the catalyst to catching the Jax in that Baron power play that we eventually saw pan out as well. And yeah, just all around very, very good performance from that set. Don't know if it's quite as insane a narrative as the Jin redemption arc from Wako here compared to last week.
Wako had a pretty clean game. We'll have to see whether or not he's able to repeat that success. We're going to go ahead and take a short break. When we come back, though, Game 2 between AHQ and Berjaya, and we'll see whether or not Berjaya Dragons can go ahead and tie up the series up against AHQ.
CTBC Bank is Taiwan's top financial institution, but we're not stopping there. We're crafting an international brand and already have over 260 outlets in 14 countries. We are by your side, ready to embrace the future.